Hello everybody, my name is James Blackwell. I am a trumpet player. I love playing the trumpet, and I also love ear training. The reason I love ear training is because it's helped me so much. So with this masterclass and my submission here to the International Trumpet Guild, I want to help the non-pro player incorporate ear training into their daily practice so that you can experience the practical benefits of doing so. And they are great, all right? I just want to say that right off the bat, because the hardest thing about ear training is getting people to do it. Trumpet players will spend their life savings on mouthpieces and horns and method books and spend hours and hours and hours and hours a day doing lip slurs and whatever exercise they think is going to give them a double C, but very few will take the time to actually sit down and learn these fundamentals of relative pitch, which essentially will make you a more fluent and intelligent musician and set you free from all that stuff. Okie dokie. So, we will begin here with the whys of ear training. Why do we ear train? Or what are the practical benefits of ear training? And the simplest way to understand that is to just realize, have you ever had the experience where when you know how a song is supposed to sound, it's a whole heck of a lot easier to play? That's the gist of ear training. And the more familiar you are with these relative pitch building blocks, which we're going to cover here in a moment, the more you'll just know what songs sound like from the get-go. You won't have to play through it to know what it sounds like. You'll be able to look at a piece of sheet music and know what the music sounds like. You'll be able to listen to music and recognize the intervals from one note to the next and be able to write it out or simply just play it. Okay, so it's going to cut your practice time down in half. All you got to have are good trumpet fundamentals and a great ear, and you're going to be playing your butt off all the time. Okay, so again, if you really want to understand the whys, just kind of pay attention when you're practicing or you're having your musical experiences, you're going out and you're playing, you're listening to music, and just begin to take notice of the times where a deficiency in the ear is leading to problems on the gig or problems on the performance. So whether it's sight reading if you play in church and you got your hymn book in front of you, and you're clamming notes left and right just because you don't know what they're supposed to sound like before you play them. Whatever it is, however simple it is, just realize where an improved ear, if you were a, quote, more talented musician or born with good ears or one of these things, just take a notice of where those things are occurring and how learning this information would pay off for you in a practical benefit. And now let's talk about the what, which is going to be the bulk of this little masterclass here, and we are going to focus on the 12 chromatic intervals. So I'll turn my keyboard on here, and let me just play the intervals for you real quick. So that's a C, concert C. So we'll start with a unison, same note. Two people playing the same note as a unison. Now there are only 12 of these intervals, okay? So we'll start here, and then that's a distance, distance, distance. Notice how they all have a kind of a different flavor to them. That has a certain sound to it. That has a different kind of a sound to it. That has a different kind of a sound to it. These are the qualities of the intervals. And just like the colors, they're always the same. Okay, so those are all of the intervals within one octave. Notice how that has a certain quality or a sound to it. It's got a different quality or sound. Different. They're all different. And what you need to understand, first of all, is that there really are only 12 of these things. Like if I, within an octave, okay? So if I play this, a C to a D, that's the interval called a major second. We are, right? Now, if I put the D up one octave, here's the C. I put the D up an octave. Okay? You say that's a different interval. That's called a ninth because it's separated by an octave. However, if you are intimately familiar, let me turn this up a little bit just in case. If you're intimately familiar with that second, then hearing the octave displacement, you'll be able to do that in an afternoon. Okay, so we're going to focus on simply the 12 chromatic intervals within one octave. All right, so in learning the intervals, there are two things that you need to know. First is the sound. This is what's called a perfect fourth. I always use this as an example because it's a sound that most people are familiar with. Here comes the bride. That's a perfect fourth. Okay? And that is the sound of the perfect fourth. And no matter what note you start on, if you play that distance of a fourth, it always sounds the same. Okay? So that's the first thing you need to know about an interval, is the way that it sounds. So when you hear the perfect fourth, you know that it's a perfect fourth. I got a little extra note in there. But you go, that's a perfect fourth. If you can do that, you've got good ears. All right? So the second thing that you need to do is apply a little bit of music theory to this and practice what are called the musical spellings of each interval. And we are going to talk about that in 1 second. And the value of knowing these musical spellings is that here's a perfect fourth here. So you know the sound of the perfect fourth, right? And this sound can come on any of these notes. They're all perfect fourths. But if you know what two possible note combinations beginning on any note on the keyboard can create that sound, that's when your sight reading and your key signatures and your scales, all this theory stuff that people, rack their mind over for years and years and years trying to memorize their key signatures and their scales and blah, 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 blah. But if you just know the spelling from one note to the next note that creates an interval, you know all of that. All of it, by default. Okay? So let me pull up my notes here real quick. We'll talk about the how to figure out these musical spellings, and then we will start an exercise that teaches you how to practice the spellings and the sounds at the same time. All right, so one moment here. I'm going to pull up my computer. I got a little outline. Okay, so for this section here, when we're talking about the musical spellings, this is kind of the music theory need to know to make your awareness of the intervals work for you on a very practical level when you're sight reading and doing all these different things that we do as musicians. Okay, so if any of this becomes a bit dense, don't worry about that, or if it doesn't sink in on the first go-around, that's no problem. You can always watch this tape again, and I will also include some additional materials. I've got some articles up on my website, and I will link to those as well, so you can check those out if you need a little bit more time with this information. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do here is take a look at the piano keyboard. And first of all, when we talk about spellings, note spellings, letter spellings, enharmonic spellings, what we're talking about are just the letters that are associated with each key on the keyboard. So you look at the white keys there, and you see we've got C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So C is the spelling for that note. D is the spelling for the note D, E is the spelling for the note E, and so on. So spellings are just what letter we call each note, okay? Now notice that some of these keys here have more than one spelling on them. For example, this first black key here on the left with the green arrow above it, very convenient little green arrow there, it is pointing to a black key that's called or spelled either C sharp or D flat. Okay, so when we have two different spellings for the same note, those are called enharmonic spellings. And depending on what key you're playing in or what interval you're playing up or down from any other note, you'll see that these different enharmonic spellings allow us to keep the music nicely organized, and it all just makes a lot more sense, especially from the perspective of relative pitch. So you don't need to worry about any of this too much at this time. I just want to go over a couple of these music theory basics in case they are new to some of you. And for the rest of you, this is just a nice little review. And then when we do our first exercise here in a moment on the piano, you'll see how all this ties in. Okay, so the next thing that we need to know about here, we take a look at this next image of the keyboard, is back to the spellings, the letter spellings. You'll notice that they are all spelled with some letter A through G from the English alphabet. Okay, so each one of these letters, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, are called degrees. Now, the purpose of these degrees is that they allow us to know what kind of interval we have between any two notes. So if you take a look at this image here of the seventh, you'll notice that the interval from A up to G is called a seventh because it covers 7 unique letters from A to G. A1, B2, C3, D4, E5, F6, G7. All right, so that means A, going up the keyboard to the right to G, is the interval of a seventh. And the reason it's a seventh is because it has 7 unique letters. Likewise, if you go from A up to C, that is the interval of a third, because there are 3 unique letters, A, B, C, between those two notes. And you can see that I've just got these labeled here, 1 through 7, and I'm sure that you can make some sense of that on your own. A up to E is a fifth. A, B, C, D, E. Those are 5 unique letters, so it will make the interval a fifth. And just so you know, A is not always considered 1. We usually what we do is we just call our starting pitch 1. So if we started on the letter G, then and we went a fifth up from G, then we would just count the degrees from G to D. G is 1, A is 2, B is 3, C is 4, D would then be 5, and then that would be a fifth from G to D. Again, this will all become very clear when we hop on the piano, but I just wanted to throw that in so you're not getting too wrapped up in this exact example right here. Now, the other thing that you need to know about these degrees is that the accidentals are completely irrelevant. They don't matter at all at this point when we're just simply labeling a fifth, a fourth, a sixth, a third. Maybe you already know that there are different kinds of each interval. There are major thirds and minor thirds. They're both thirds, and that's just because they have 3 letters from one note to the next. A, B, C. That's a third. A to C is a third. But the thing that you need to know here is that any kind of an A going up to any kind of a C is a third because it spans 3 degrees. So if you have an A flat going up to a C, that's a third. If you've got an A flat going up to a C sharp, that's a third. You got an A flat going up to a C double sharp, also a third. Any kind of an A flat, A natural, A sharp, A double flat, A double sharp, going up to any kind of a C, C flat, C double flat, C natural, C sharp, C double sharp is a third. Okay, so that's what you need to know about the types of the intervals here, like a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, a seventh. It just has to do with the number of degrees between each tone. Okay, so again, if this is going by a little quickly or a little dense or this is new, don't worry. It'll make a lot more sense. We're going to hop on the piano here in a moment. Okay, and the last thing that we need to know music theory-wise before practicing our first interval, which will be the perfect fifth, is that the sound of the intervals, so when I played on the piano earlier, I played all the chromatic intervals from the unison up through the octave. Each one of those sounds and the quality that is created has to do with the number of half steps between each tone. So our first interval will be a perfect fifth. And a perfect fifth has 7 half steps between the bottom and the top note. So if you start on any note of the piano and you play another note that's either 7 half steps up or 7 half steps down, it's going to sound like a perfect fifth. Doesn't matter what note you start on. So the sound of an interval is dictated by how many half steps are between each tone, and the name of the interval is dictated by the number of degrees that those note spellings span. Okay, so now to put a little bit of this into practice here before we hop on the piano, let's just spell a few perfect fifths. Okay, so we'll start here with this image. We're going to spell a perfect fifth above C. So C is on the left there. You'll see it's the one with the first green arrow on it, and then we're going up to G. So first of all, what we need to do is we count the 7 half steps up. So as you'll see, each one of these arrows denotes a half step up to the next key. So we got C sharp, C to C sharp, 1, C sharp to D, 2, D to D sharp, 3, D sharp to E, 4, E to F, 5, F to F sharp, 6, F sharp to G, 7. So forget about the note spellings here for a second. Just know that when you press that first key, the one that says C and B sharp, and then you press the second key that is up 7 half steps, that's the sound of a fifth. So it doesn't matter what we call those keys. We call the bottom key cat and the top key dog. It makes no difference. It's going to sound like a perfect fifth. Okay, so in spelling it, this is kind of an easy example. Spelling-wise, we have to simply know what note we're starting on, which is a C. And then we have to know that the other note, the top note of the fifth, has to be 5 degrees away. So if we count through the alphabet, C, D, E, F, G, G is 5 degrees above C. So remember, any kind of a G, any kind of a C going up to any kind of a G is a perfect fifth. So how do we know what kind of a G to call it? G flat, G sharp, G natural, etc. Well, we just look at the key. It's on a white key, and that's the G natural. That's the key G natural. If we use the same example, we go up 1 half step, and we're starting on a C sharp, then we can just count up, you know, 7 additional half steps. C sharp up to D, 1, up to D sharp, 2, up to E, 3, up to F, 4, up to F sharp, 5, up to G, 6, and then we hit the black key that's either G sharp or A flat. And of course, we know that the bottom is a C. It's a C sharp. Doesn't matter what kind of C it is, it's still the degree C. So the note that we are going up to a fifth above that has to be spelled as some kind of a G. And in this case, it is the key G sharp. To take it one step further, if we were to call that note an A flat rather than a G sharp, and we count the degrees from C to A, what do we get? C1, D2, E3, F4, G5, A6. So what we've done by calling that top note an A flat rather than a G sharp is that we've spelled some kind of a sixth. And this is the part that confuses people, is that the first one's a fifth, the second one's a sixth. They sound exactly the same. It's the same exact sound, but from a theoretical perspective, we have to spell the intervals properly because that's how they're notated on the musical staff when we're playing melodies. Hopefully, anyways. If whoever wrote the music knows what they're doing, then that's what they did, and it's easier to read that way, which is the reason that we do this. And then, of course, the same thing works in reverse. So take a look at this image here. We've got a fifth spelled up from A is an E, A, B, C, D, E, 5 degrees, and that is indeed 7 half steps if you were to count the distance between those two notes. But then when we move down the keyboard to the left, of course we have to go down 7 half steps now, and we land on the key D, which is the correct spelling, a perfect fifth below A, because it is 5 degrees going the other direction, A, G, F, E, D. So backward through the alphabet, 5 letters. Okay, so again, this is going to make a lot more sense here. In 1 second, we're going to hop back on the piano, and we're going to practice these spellings along with the sounds of the keyboard. And if you find that we're moving by a little bit more quickly than you're able to think through these things on the keyboard, you know, no sweat. I'll give you some practice suggestions right after that, and you'll be able to go back and take this at your own pace and really move through this whole idea of note spellings, you know, carefully and slowly, and be very sure that you understand the concept of degrees denoting the name of the interval and half steps denoting the sound of the interval. Okay? Groovy. Okay, so our first exercise here for getting acquainted with each of the intervals is we're going to call it the grand round. And I want to give credit where credit is due here. I learned this exercise and the following two that we'll be doing, as well as the study techniques for testing yourself on your knowledge of these sounds, from a man named David Lucas Burge. And I don't know if any of you are familiar or not if you read the Downbeat magazines. I don't know what DLB, as I like to call him, is up to these days, but he used to take out these full-page ads in Downbeat promoting his relative pitch and perfect pitch ear training courses. So, DLB, if you're out there, thanks for your contribution. I love all your stuff, and now I teach it to as many people as I can. All right, here we go. So this is the grand round. And what you're going to do is you need to walk over to a piano, keyboard, or a guitar, I don't know, maybe like a mandolin, something. You have to be able to sing and play at the same time. All right? And then you simply start on a note that's at a comfortable bottom part of your vocal range. And while we do this exercise, I encourage all of you to sing along with me, because you'll start to notice almost instantly after you do a few of these, the sounds start to soak in. You get that kind of tingly, warm, fuzzy feeling like you're learning something new. Alrighty? So you want to start at the bottom of your range. It doesn't matter what octave you sing in. If your voice is pitched one octave higher or lower than mine, fine, sing in that octave. So I'm going to start here on the low C. And what we're going to do is we're going to practice singing the fifths with their appropriate spellings. Okay? So as we know from the spelling, the fifth above C is G. Oh. So we're going to sing both of those notes in this pattern. C, G, C, G, G, C, G, C. Okay? So just for your brain there, the thinking brain, just realize that what you're doing is you're practicing both the sounds and the spellings of the note at the same time. Okay? Now before we go on, I also want to say that if you're not the world's greatest singer, it doesn't matter. Your ability to sing in tune has more to do with your vocal control and how much you practice singing and how trained your vocal cords are than anything else. You can have the best ears in the world and be a terrible singer. All right? So let's try that one together. C, G. And 1, 2, 3. C, G, C, G, G, C, G, C. Okay? Now the reason I want you to start at any note, doesn't matter what note on the keyboard you start on, but you want to start toward the bottom of your range, because we're going to move through an entire octave of these. So when we get up another octave, we're actually going to be an octave and another fifth higher. C, G, C, G, C, G. I sang the same thing. C, G. Some falsetto there. Anyways, so we did the first one. Now we're going to go up to the next key here, which is this black key between C and G. Now remember, this black key can be spelled as a C sharp, or it can be spelled as a D flat. Same note, different enharmonic spelling. So what we're going to do while we're working through the grand round is we're going to spell the black keys while we're moving up the keyboard, always as sharps. Okay, so we're going to practice our sharp spellings on the way up, flat spellings on the way down. That way we become fluent in all enharmonic forms of each interval. Okay? So we're starting on a C sharp. Now let's figure out the spelling of our top note here. So 7 half steps up. We get the black key that is in between G and A. G sharp or A flat. So what do we call it? G sharp or A flat? That's right, G sharp. And the reason for that is because the spelling has to use 5 degrees, since this is a fifth. C, D, E, F, G. That's a fifth. So if we're going from some kind of a G up a fifth, we have to be playing some kind, did I say that right? If we're playing some kind of a C, and then we're going up a fifth, we have to play some kind of a G. So C sharp up to G sharp is a perfect fifth. So we'll sing that together now. C sharp, G sharp, C sharp, G sharp, G sharp, C sharp, G sharp, C sharp. Okay, I'll quit blabbing on here for a minute. We'll go to our next one, which is D going up to A. D, A, D, A, A, D, A, D. All right, next one. So this next black key, D sharp, because we're going up the keyboard in sharps. So what are we going to have on the top here? This key that can be A sharp or B flat. Of course, we're going to call it an A sharp, because D, E, F, G, A is a fifth. And we're practicing our perfect fifths. So here we go, D sharp, A sharp. D sharp, A sharp, D sharp, A sharp, A sharp, D sharp, A sharp, D sharp. So as you can hear, I am not singing necessarily in tune, but I'm still internalizing the feeling of these sounds, and they sound like a fifth to me even if I can't sing it perfectly in tune. So the next one is E, B. E, B, E, B, B, E, B, E. Beautiful. Let's keep going. I hope you're singing along at home. I want you to get those warm, fuzzy feelings, the light bulb moment, whatever you want to call it. Next one is F up to C. F, C, F, C, C, F, C, F. Okay, so then we've got our F sharp to C sharp. F sharp, C sharp, F sharp, C sharp, C sharp, F sharp, C sharp, F sharp. And as you may notice, I have a very limited vocal range. I'm already feeling hoarse and getting into some falsetto stuff here, but let's keep going. G up to D. G, D, G, D. Sing along. D, G, D, G. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. You sound great. Here we go. G sharp to D sharp. G sharp, D sharp, G sharp, D sharp, D sharp, G sharp, D sharp, G sharp. Okie dokie. Next one up, A to E. A, E, A, E, E, A, E, A. All right, here we go. Now this is going to be a little bit of a funny one here because we've got the note A sharp going up to a white key. So this is our first black key going up to a white key. And if you see here, what white key are we on? That is really difficult to tell. But that is the F. What would typically be called in, most instances, F. Oh, like our G on the trumpet. Concert F. Okay? But we're starting on an A sharp. So remembering our scale degrees here, we have to remember that some kind of an A, if you're going up a fifth, it has to be going up to an E. A, B, C, D, E is a fifth. A to E is a fifth. So this note is not F. It's E sharp, even though it's a white key. So A sharp, E sharp. A sharp, E sharp. A sharp, E sharp. E sharp, A sharp, E sharp, A sharp. Let's scoot you back here a little bit. Okay, so now we're on B up to F sharp. B, F sharp, B, F sharp, F sharp, B, F sharp, B. Beautiful, beautiful. You notice I went down an octave there. Totally fine. I'm still internalizing the spellings and the sound of the fifth. That's the most important thing. Out of tune, displaced by an octave, doesn't matter. You're still going to learn the intervals. And here's our last one, back on C to G, so this will be the top. C, G, C, G, G, C, G, C. Okay, so that's the grand round going up one octave. Now we're going to reverse the pattern, so we'll do the top note first. And we'll go back down the keyboard, calling all the black keys, the starting black keys, by flats. Okay, now one other thing that sometimes I get asked is, people get bugged by this whole concert pitch spelling, right? O, E, C, G, and we're trumpet players, and typically most of us are playing B-flat trumpets, I guess. Maybe some of you guys are playing C trumpets, guys and gals. But for the most part, if you go to the store and buy yourself a trumpet, it's going to be pitched in the key of B-flat. So don't let that bother you, and in my most humble opinion, what we need to do as transposing instrument performers is take the responsibility into ourselves to understand the concert pitch spelling for every single note that we're playing. It's nobody else's responsibility except our own. So on the trumpet, this would be D-A. On the B-flat trumpet, these would be the notes D, A. But on the piano, they're C, G. And my suggestion is that you get used to calling everything that you play on your trumpet by its concert pitch spelling. There's reasons for that, which we don't need to get into right now. But just be aware that when you play your C in the staff, you're playing a B-flat. It's not a C. It's called a C for the trumpet. It's written as a C on the sheet music, but it is not a C. It's a B-flat. Okay? So now we'll do our grand round going down in reverse order, calling the notes by their flat spellings. So the first one is G, C, G, C, G, C, C, G, C, G. Okay, now we're on this black key here, which was F sharp before, and is now G flat. G flat, C flat, G flat, C flat, C flat, G flat, C flat, G flat. So that's another example right there where we're on a white key, the key that's normally called B, but due to the fact that it is a fifth below G flat, it must be spelled as C flat, not B. G, F, E, D, C. Okay, so that's how that's going to work for all the intervals. And the more fluent and the quicker you become with all these different spellings, that's when you really start to notice that your sight reading gets improved, because key signatures don't matter anymore. It doesn't matter what key you're in, it's going to be just as easy to play any song in any key if you're aware of these interval spellings. And on that note, give me one moment here. I'm going to turn this off and see if I can adjust the lighting. It seems like it's kind of whiting out on me. Okay, hopefully that fixes it a little bit. Maybe I should just get some more sun and quit being so much of a inside kid. You know what I mean? All right, here we go. So back down now, we're on F. F, and of course, F, E, D, C, B. We're going to a B, and it's a black key right here, so it's B flat. F, B flat, F, B flat, B flat, F, B flat, F. All right, let's keep going. E, A, E, A, A, E, A, E. All right, I'm going to hop back up to this octave. Wait. Ha. E flat to A flat. E flat, A flat, E flat, A flat, A flat, E flat, A flat, E flat. And then D going down to G. Sing it along with me. D, G, D, G, G, D, G, D. Now we're on the black key here, D flat, going down to, that's right, G flat. D flat, G flat, D flat, G flat, G flat, D flat, G flat, D flat. C, F, C, F, F, C, F, C. And now we're going to call this B. Since we're not on a black key, we're only calling our black keys by the varying sharps and spellings as the starting pitch. So we're not going to call this C flat, and we're not going to call E F flat on the way down. It's just regular old B. So we're going B down to E. B, E, B, E, E, B, E, B. And now we're going down B flat, E flat. B flat, E flat, B flat, E flat, E flat, B flat, E flat, B flat. All right, A, D. A, D, A, D, D, A, D, A. Two more to go. A flat, D flat. A flat, D flat, A flat, D flat, D flat, A flat, D flat, A flat. G, C, G, C, C, G, C, G. That is a complete grand round. One octave, all the spellings, not all the possible theoretical spellings, because occasionally you may have some other spellings that don't occur when you're practicing the grand rounds. Like, for example, if this F is spelled not as an F, but as an E sharp, then you have to know that this top note is not a C, it's a B sharp. Okay, so that's an example of one that we did not do, and you will run into actual double sharps and double flats occasionally in a theoretical sense, most likely not in the music you're going to play, but once you are well versed in how these intervals are spelled and you've practiced the spellings of them a couple times, all that's sort of easy, no brainer. Okay, so it's only like right in the beginning where you have to kind of think about it and really just take your time and go very slow, and once you do enough of this, it'll become totally second nature, very easy. In terms of practicing this, you don't need to do this every day. You only need to do it until you know the sound of the intervals and the spellings, and you've gained some basic familiarity with those two elements of each interval. Because then you move on to different forms of testing and using this awareness in a practical sense. So don't think this is some kind of routine, that you have to do for the rest of your life, because it's not. You only have to do it until you recognize the sounds, and then you're done. Okay? That's the beauty of it. And that's what I really want to get across to everyone, is that even if it takes you a year, it took me 18 months. 18 months to get 12 intervals in the bag, down cold, no mistakes, know when I hear them, like the difference between red and green. 18 months. So when you're sitting here at the day one, you think to yourself, well, golly, 18 months, that's forever. But you got to think about two things. First of all, one of these days, today is going to be 18 months. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be, this today is going to be the today that's 18 months away at this point, and it's better to know the intervals by then than not. That's the first thing. The second thing is, if it takes you 18 months practicing for 15 minutes a day and you remember it for the rest of your life, I mean, come on, that's a pretty small price to pay. So I would say just get comfortable with the intervals. One interval per month. That'd be a great way to lay a solid foundation of relative pitch. Okay, now there's one other exercise that you can practice where you exclude the spellings, because you're not always going to know what notes you hear when you hear a perfect fifth, but you still have to know that it's a perfect fifth. And all you do for that is you just call the perfect fifth as the lyrics. Perfect fifth, perfect fifth, perfect fifth, perfect fifth. Any old note? Perfect fifth, perfect fifth, perfect fifth, perfect fifth. Okay, so even in doing this right now, I'm getting those it's almost like, I don't know what you call it, like a learning high. It's starting to feel warm and fuzzy and good about this, because that just means that your subconscious mind is picking up on something. You don't have to know what it's picking up on. You just got to continue to do the work, and it's just going to resonate through your whole body until these things become a feeling. And then you're watching TV and you're watching Game of Thrones and you realize bum 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 bum, that those are all fifths. Oh, perfect fifth. Oh, oh. Okay? So that's not you playing your trumpet, but that's still pretty cool. And next thing you know, you're ear training all the time. You're ear training all the time. You turn on the television, you're ear training. You don't even have to think about it. It's not work. It's automatic de facto ear training, because your mind is processing the music like a language. Okay, so how do you know when you're ready to be done with this grand round stuff? Simple. You do a little bit of a test here called the random round. Okay, so the random round is you play any note. You look at the piano, you play a note. I'll play F. Oh, that's an F. So you, to test yourself, need to be able to sing a fifth above that with the proper spelling. C. Beautiful, right? And then you got to go down. F, B flat. So it's a different note, up a fifth and down a fifth. When you can do that on any of the notes, we got a C sharp here. G sharp, C sharp, F sharp. When you can do that, you know the interval. All right? So that is the grand round. The sound round is just singing the lyric, the interval name as the lyric. And then the random round is the test for once the interval has been internalized. And that's the basic ground level foundation of learning each interval. There are a few other things to keep in mind if you really want to develop this skill to where it is functioning for you majorly. kind of in the background while you're playing your trumpet, you have to learn how to recognize the intervals quickly. Whoa, that was a tritone. Fifth, third, third. So you have to be able to go through there and distinguish each interval within 1 or 2 seconds. And there's a couple of ways that you can do this. Be forewarned, product placement coming here in a moment. But one way is you can just get together with a friend, and you can just sit there and quiz each other. That's a fifth. Let me rewind here for a second. Before you get into this, you need to know 2 intervals. So I recommend learning the perfect fifth first, and then the perfect fourth second. They're inversions of one another. So the C to G is a fifth, excuse me, and then G to C is a fourth. All right, same 2 notes, 2 different intervals, depending on what order they're in. And they have kind of a similar hollow sound. And some people find that confusing. So it's a good place to start. You first learn the fifths. And then when you can do your B flat F, B flat E flat, there it is, B flat E flat. When you can do that, you know the fifth. Then you go through the same process with the fourths. Now you have 2 intervals here that you are aware of, and you need to learn to distinguish between the 2 quickly. This is like when you show a little kid a book, you know, the orange, the green apple. You know, you just go through and, you know, you don't try to learn 10,000 things at once. You just take it one step at a time. So you can get together with a friend and you just play combinations of fourths and fifths. Fourth, fourth. I have to look. I'm not a good enough piano player to do it without looking. Fifth. So it's kind of cheating. But you get the idea. You can go back and forth and you quiz each other for about, you know, 4 or 5 minutes each. Take turns identifying the intervals. When you're doing this, remember, go back to the how of ear training. How do we ear train? It's not something to worry about. It's not something to fret about. If you don't know the answer, listen to the interval. Have your friend give you the answer. Listen to the answer. It's a totally subconscious, automatic process as long as you're willing to dedicate 10, 15 minutes a day to learning these elements of music. And then just get faster and faster and faster. The other way that you can do it, if you don't want to ear train with a friend, is just turn on, you know, your voice memos thing on your smartphone or whatever you got, and just play a bunch of fourths and fifths randomly. Wait 2 seconds. Perfect fourth. 1. Perfect fifth. Perfect fourth. Perfect fifth. So get some short ones in there, some long ones, so you hear them in different rhythms and in different durations, and it kind of coaxes the mind into, boom, being able to know it when you hear it. And then you just go back through, record 5 or 10 minutes of that, and then go back through and take your own test as a test. And if you listen to it so much that you memorize the actual order of the answers, great, beautiful. That means that you're getting in the listening time that you need for the subconscious mind to absorb these sounds and for them to kind of etch themselves on the mind. So those are the 2 main ways to get to where you can identify each interval rapidly, which is vitally important if you want it to affect your sight reading and your ability to play by ear and your ability to do takedowns, transcriptions, learn new songs, because the pesky thing about music is that it tends to move by a little bit more quickly than we want it to, right? So if you have to sit there and sound out each interval and it takes you 5 to 10 seconds per interval, the song's over by the time you get to the 3rd note. So you have to be able to identify them fast, and those are the 2 ways. Now what I was going to say with the product placement here is that blackwellstrumpetbasics.com, I have a course called Ear Training for Trumpeters. It's a subscription model course. It costs $10 a month. You get extra stuff too. It's not just that course. There's different courses. And the whole thing just goes through graded systematically. There's tests for every single aspect of this that you need to know. Spelling tests, sound tests, interval identification tests. We get into mixing and matching the different inversions. And there's nothing special about any of it, any of the exercises, but once you get to the end of the course and you've put in all that work, then, you know, the mental exercise of it massages your brain, and you wake up one day and boom, all of a sudden you're hearing this stuff everywhere, and you're hearing car horns, you know it's a minor third, that one's a major third, that one's a perfect fourth, you know, the crosswalk is a perfect fifth, the elevator is a major third. All that stuff, you start hearing it out in the wild. Okay, so I hope that this was helpful for you. And if you do have any questions, I encourage you to reach out. My name is James Blackwell, one more time. You can email me directly at jamesmblackwell, JamesMBlackwell, @gmail.com. Careful, that M, middle initial from Michael. Sometimes people miss the M and I don't get the email. Okay? Or you can swing by blackwellstrumpetbasics.com. I encourage you to sign up for my mailing list. I just have a couple of things that I like to send out, and then I let people know when I have new blog articles. I enjoy making articles and mini-series and full-blown courses. I just like doing this stuff and sharing it with people. Or there are also contact forms on the website. If you don't want to sign up for the email list, you can simply contact me through the website, and I will get back to you. Yeah, that's a lot. So in terms of you applying this right now, just do a little bit. You don't have to do the whole grand round if you don't want to. You don't have the time for it. But just start doing the fifths, practicing the spellings. We're talking 5, 10, 15 minutes a day until you're familiar with it, and then you move on to the next step. Testing yourself, making some little speed recognition drills on your phone, giving yourself exams, getting more and more and more acquainted with the intervals, and you'll be well on your way. Like I said, you focus on one interval per month. That's an easy pace. If you do it every day, don't slack off. Don't take 2 weeks off and think you're going to learn it in a month. But just keep going a small amount each day, and then once you feel comfortable that you've learned that interval, you go to the next interval. So I'll suggest learning them in, learning them in this order. Fifths and fourths, second fourths, those are inversions of one another. Third octaves, and those are the 3 perfect intervals. So fifth, fourth, octave. Those are all the ones that have kind of that hollow quality, and the fourths and fifths are inversions of one another. Then go to your thirds, major and minor thirds, and then your sixths, major and minor sixths. Those are inversions of one another as well. And then the seconds, major, minor seconds, major, minor sevenths. After you do that, you'll know all this stuff. Music will be like, woo, easiest thing in the world. Then all you got to do is worry about your chops. All right? So once again, my name is James Blackwell. This is Ear Training for Trumpeters. That's the name of my course and this stuff. So I hope that you enjoyed this little lecture series, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the phenomenal teachers and players as a part of the ITG conference. And I would love to hear from you. Shoot me an email. Get on the mailing list. Hit me up with a contact form. And everyone be well, and I've really enjoyed spending this time talking to my cell phone, pretending that I'm talking to you live. Okay? Alrighty, take care.